inteGREAT is a power tool for business and systems analysts. It provides a variety of different capabilities. It supports Agile, Scrum, CMMI, and other hybrid templates. I've opened up a project in the structured requirements template. When you open it up, you will see certain key knowledge areas presented at the top. Let's create a new requirement specification. Let's call it CRM requirements specification. Once you create a new specification, I'll hit enter to open it up. At this point, I'm going to create a high-level requirement. I'm going to call it user management. For user management, I can create new requirements underneath that of various types. Alternatively, I can go to the context menu and create a child, such as system shall allow users to register online. We'll create a second requirement, functional requirement. It's got spell checking built into it. You can insert a requirement using the first icon in the context menu or use the insert above. So we'll insert a requirement here. System shall inserted FR. You can also, by hitting Shift Enter, create a requirement right underneath the selected requirement. So this is inserted right after selected requirement. You can hit Alt Enter to create a child of the same requirement type. You can also further drill down on a functional requirement to define your business rule. Business rules such as user may only register once. Each requirement has many properties. What I've been typing here is the title or the name of the requirement. The properties in the table can be changed right within the table. You can also color code the requirements based on the value of one of the columns. So you can see in this case, there's only one high priority requirement, which is in purple. Or there are multiple medium priority or a different color for the urgent requirement. Requirements have many other properties that are shown below, such as the description. The description shows up in a property panel at the bottom so that we don't have to bring up a pop-up window. Now I can simply select a second requirement, put its description, go back to the first one, and you will see when there is a description associated to a requirement, the icon for the description stays lit. There are other properties for a given requirement object. These properties are all configurable, and so are the requirement object types. These properties can be shown in the table above simply by selecting the columns. There is the history of changes on a requirement. There are comments you can add attachments, document links, and so on. I will unpin it. You also have the ability to create linked objects. You click on the link icon, opens up the Power Panel. In the Power Panel, you can firstly see all traceability, so you can do impact assessment using this. You can also create linked objects such as a process. So you can see there's already a register process defined, so I'll select it and link to it. In the event that a process did not exist, then I would create a process object and also have it linked to the requirement. You can also link to existing objects. You can either search for it or you can browse through other specifications in the project and simply link to requirements. So I could select a detailed user details report and link to that requirement. So this is now linked to that requirement. You can collapse the power panel, you can hover over it and it'll open it up. If I go to the test process, I can drill down on it simply by a right mouse click and selecting the drill down option. And that will open up the process window. The process view is where you have the ability to define your activity diagram as well as have access to the power panel on the right side as before, but now you can see this requirement is linked to the process from where the process was defined. We'll come back to looking at processes in a minute. One of the key capabilities of inteGREAT is the ability to reuse. When you reuse, for example, I can go to my library, select a specification called the Access Security Specification and load this into my project. When I load it into my project, I can now select that specification and open that up. You will see that when defining access security, there are 6 areas of concern: data, process, logistics, timing, purpose, and role. Every area of concern has many questions. When you answer those questions, this will help you define your non-functional requirements related to access security. Not only do you have these questions and you can create your own specifications with questions, but once you've answered these, this specification now can be reused by another project, and so that they don't have to redefine the requirements for access security. This idea of reuse is available across the board. So whether you're defining your project strategy, specification, or requirements, or stakeholder analysis, or domain modeling, or processes, they are all reusable. Once you define it, you can reuse it in other projects. You literally start to think of requirements as strategic assets as opposed to simply tactical functions for a given project. Let's take a look at the login process. A process is extremely powerful. A process has a lot of great information in it. This login process has, for example, linked to the login screen, various properties such as the username and password. The login process itself has requirements and actors and events linked to it. The properties underneath that has preconditions, postconditions, description, all defined as well. Once you define a process, the process becomes extremely powerful. The process can now be used along with all the links therein to generate a detailed use case document. The detailed use case document begins with the description, the priority, the actors that are linked to the process, the preconditions and the postconditions, the extended use case, the functional requirements and the business rule linked to the process, the non-functionals. This is your basic flow. The alternate flows. All of these are determined simply based on this process and the information linked to them. Here is your narrative. The narrative is like pseudocode. Developers love this because that is how they think. Very efficient, to the point. The UI specification. The UI can either be designed with an inteGREAT or you can link existing UI to the display object. This is the data that is linked to the display, along with all its characteristics and business rules. The second artifact that inteGREAT produces out of a process is test cases. You see, if you give this document to a tester, the tester is going to identify all the various test permutations, all the different test scenarios, the pathways, and then record those and link requirements to that. Now, instead of doing that manually, inteGREAT will automatically generate the test cases. So in this case, inteGREAT found that there are 4 different test cases. Each test case is then recorded along with the steps and the requirements that link to every step. So you have all the test cases recorded. There are other artifacts inteGREAT will produce, like the requirements traceability matrix, the UI test cases, the field validation matrix, and such. The field validation matrix is a very interesting artifact for testers, where it identifies the various fields on the screen, on the form, the rules that relate to each of the fields, and their characteristics, as well as the valid and invalid test classes. This saves an enormous amount of time for testers, provides them a jump start in what they need to do. The process is also used for simulation. The simulation that we'll first take a look at is the simulation wizard. The simulation wizard is where you can ask inteGREAT to produce wireframes. Here is the UI that inteGREAT came up with automatically. This is very unique about inteGREAT. It can actually look at your process and the data map to it and render the UI. In this UI, you've got the login screen with 2 fields, so I can now walk a business user through it and explain to them how this might, in fact, work. I can now click on login, and this would take me to a condition, true path and false path. I'll select the false path, the other path, and I'll see a message, and then I can go back to the login screen. The simulation wizard can be used to create and extend the requirement as well. So let's say that I want to create a new function here called register. And my target here is going to be a new screen called register screen. Like so. And then I'll go ahead and re-render the simulation. So you can see now I have a new button. If I click on it, it takes me to a blank screen. At this point, I can add either new fields on that screen, or I can reuse screens that's already defined in my data dictionary that we saw earlier. I will accept that. We'll add a navigation button to it. We'll call it submit. And from there, we'll go back to the login screen. And so we now have the registration screen defined. I can click on it and it takes me to the login screen. And lastly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here and I'm going to say that the forgot password should not be a button, but a tab. Register should also be a tab. And I will regenerate the UI here. And that's my new updated UI. Okay. So in this manner, you can not only rapidly build out your UI, but you can quickly review this with the stakeholders before you actually drill down on the requirements further, creating a common understanding. The other option that you have is the ability to do high fidelity UI. Now the high fidelity UI can be invoked from the inteGREAT menu or from within the simulation wizard. So I'm going to invoke the simulation designer here. And using the simulation designer, you can now create custom UIs as opposed to where inteGREAT creates the wireframe for you, the simulation designer allows you to build out your UI in a more specific way. So here's my login screen we looked at. Here is the registration screen. Now I can alter this information right in here, or I can create a new page. And in the new page, I can now start to create the various controls. I can put in rich text controls, buttons, and all the standard controls, or you can do drawing on it as well. You also have the ability to reuse resources, like you can have the various icons, buttons, and skins that you might want to use. So I have a predefined skin here. I can bring in this skin or a status bar and simply reuse it. So this idea of reuse is very powerful because you can define components with all the sub-elements therein and build on it. Okay. So this is the idea behind Simulation Designer, high fidelity UI. You can link pages and design your own custom UI as opposed to using what the simulation wizard does. But the power of the wizard is that you can build it out very quickly. Whereas when you use the designer, it certainly obviously takes a little longer to do it in there. Now that we have built out the registration path, so this is the path I just created brand new. Let's go and give it orange color. So that's the path we just built. And once we have built this, we can now go ahead and generate our detailed use case document again. And this time, you will see that that we now have different scenario, one new scenario recorded for the register path. And that's the register path. And you will also see that the pseudocode has been updated. The UI has been updated. And the new screen has been added. And similarly, your test cases have been updated. So now we have a fourth test case, or a fifth test case rather, for the registration scenario. The idea of reuse is central. Whether we reuse the information that you have defined in the process, in the analysis of it, and production of use cases, test cases, simulation, or simply the fact that you can reuse requirement specifications, as we saw earlier. inteGREAT has a variety of different approaches for reuse. The other knowledge areas work in a very similar manner. So for example, when you look at domain modeling, in domain modeling, you're defining your business objects and entities, their attributes or characteristics. And so for example, if I go here and I want to add a new attribute, such as user ID, I can now give it a type. So let's call it a string or a number or a Boolean. We'll call it a string. We're going to say that this is 8 characters and that is alphanumeric. We may also add a new business rule to it. User ID will come from Active Directory. Once you've defined your domain model, you can then produce your data dictionary from it. In the data dictionary, this is the list of entities you have. These are its attributes. This is the user ID we just added with all its characteristics, including the business rule that we just defined. So the idea in inteGREAT is really to create information and documents come out of it the other way. There are other reports that come out of the domain model, such as file layout specifications, which is character-based file format specification. People that use mainframe systems integration, they use formats like these for data interchange. So it's the predecessor to XML-based data interchange. When you're using inteGREAT in a group setting, you're going to be using it with Microsoft's Team Foundation server. And as such, TFS becomes the main database. So all of these requirements are created and stored as work items in TFS. The test cases that we saw earlier from the process can be published to TFS as test cases. We also integrate with HP Quality Center, where the requirements are saved to QC bidirectionally. You can also get requirements from QC and update inteGREAT, or push requirements from inteGREAT to QC. You can also publish your use cases and test cases from inteGREAT to HP Quality Center. inteGREAT is the power tool that satisfies not only a structured requirements methodology, but Scrum, Agile, CMMI, or hybrid models. inteGREAT is highly configurable, so the knowledge areas that you're presented with are all configurable. The various object types you have seen today and others are also configurable, so are their properties, and the documents that inteGREAT produces are also configurable. So this is how inteGREAT works. And if you want further details, take a look at the step-by-step guide on how to use inteGREAT for various use cases. Thank you.